This video shows a moment a man sued a park for his injuries, and you're also going to learn how some parks deliberately endanger visitors' lives. Furthermore, some park operators lie about the safety of their slides, but first let's start with this. Number 10. YAS Waterslide. Yas Island in Abu Dhabi is home to about 45 rides, slides, and attractions. It's set across 15 hectares of land and was developed by Alpine Properties. This waterslide features the biggest artificial waves in the world for amateurs and pro surfers to practice the water sport without checking wind conditions. All the experiences in this water park are fun, but with a stint of danger. Before the ride starts, the staff tell every guest that they must not move but wait for assistance if the slide stops. This warning was a sign that anything could happen. There are also countless cases of this ride stopping halfway before the main drop. At that point, a staff would rush to the raft and wrestle with it for some seconds, and when you consider how much you have to spend risking your life, you'd prefer to remain at home. Number 9. The Black Hole. The Wet n Wild water park in Orlando is no more, but it was home to one of the most notorious water slides in the world. Many of the park's troubles began with the Black Hole, which is described as a twisting ride where guests shoot down a dark tube on a two-person float. This slide injured one man in 1994 so much that he actually sued the park successfully for $1.73 million in 2000. He narrated how he was struck by something in the dark, and by the time he arrived at the bottom of the slide, he couldn't move his legs. Doctors had to insert a titanium plate into his neck before he could move his legs again. The park did claim to be ignorant of his claims, but you can guess that no one would take them seriously. During the trial, some other victims of the ride testified against the park. They also said how they constantly got stuck in it while the attendants would send a new raft into the ride before the first one was confirmed to have exited. While this man's case was probably the worst injury suffered on the slide, others did happen as well, mostly in the dark. Number 8. Cannon-cajones Loop. The Cannon-cajones Loop is one of the world's most infamous water slides, and for all the wrong reasons. It's so notorious that riders had to be hosed down to improve their chances of making it to the end. Even Action Park's most daring adventures didn't want anything to do with it. Because of the inherent danger, the slide didn't last for more than a season. This loop looked like an interdimensional hamster habitat, and it was long and black with a loop at the end, such that you start wondering if the designer had a pact with the devil. It opened in 1985, but it barely lasted a month before the authorities shut it down. Action Park rides were dangerous, but this one beat them to their game. Even though the park authorities had tested the slide with dummies to ascertain its safety, they went on to launch it either way, even with the dummies missing parts. Number 7. Cedar Point Water Park. When the Cedar Point Water Park was built, it prided itself as the best amusement park in the world. Many tourists would agree with them, but soon began to doubt after the 2013 incident. July 2013, guests were on board the river rafting simulation ride when, of course, something horrible happened. One particular boat filled with gas rolled backward about 187 feet down the left track and hit the edge of a concrete flume. It hit another boat and flipped over. Riders were tightly held by belts but were turned upside down into the water. Really, it's only by the grace of God that they're still alive. According to the authorities, the accident happened after two of the ride's safety features failed. One of them was designed to keep the boat from sliding backward, and the other was supposed to ensure that the boat was on track. The ride continued to operate until 2016 when Cedar Point fans were fed up and willing to go. They finally admitted that the park was a wasted investment that shouldn't have been allowed to exist in the first instance. Number 6. Hawaiian Falls Water Park. One of the essential safety procedures of any slide is telling the ride operator when to send the next rider down. This is because you can't send the next one down if the last person hasn't come out of the bottom. This particular confusion occurred at the Hawaiian Falls Water Park in the summer of 2015. Lauro Castrojan, a tourist riding on the slide, suddenly realized he was stuck in the middle of the slide. Didn't scare him initially until he noticed that someone else was coming down the slide behind him with a very fast pace of speed. When the next rider did run into him, he lost consciousness and woke up at the bottom of the slide. He was rushed to the hospital via ambulance, where they deduced that he had injuries in his shoulder, leg, head, and back. Number 5. Slip and Slide. Chances are you actually have this in your backyard right now, though there actually is an inherent danger to this one. Children love the idea of this slide and don't mind that their lives are put at risk because no one really understands it. It might look innocent, but this could cause permanent spinal cord damage. The slider's forward momentum drives the body to the neck and compresses the spinal cord. In 1933, this machine was poorly designed, resulting in many injuries. Years later, things haven't changed much as the ride isn't any different. If you're like me and you're over 125 pounds, as well as most of America at this point, try not to ride this too much. You're definitely more at risk if you're more than 125 pounds. Number 4. Alpine slide. Some ideas are perfect on paper, but they're disasters waiting to happen in reality. Regardless of how you try to justify the Alpine slide, you would find a lot of loopholes. It was a 2,700-foot long concrete and fiberglass track down a mountainside. It was actually so steep that you needed a ski lift to get to the top. The tourists would hop on the little cart, then go barreling down the mountainside with only a joystick-style control that's supposed to combat natural forces like gravity and friction. As you most likely guessed, gravity and friction would always win. Action Park recorded its first death on this slide in 1980 when an employee's car jumped the track. Between 1984 and 1985, there were about 26 head injuries and 14 broken bones. Arguably, the deadliest and most painful injury involved the skin tearing off of one's body. To make matters worse, the graphic pictures from accidents were kept at the base of the ride to warn intending patrons about what they were in for. Number 3. Go-karts and speedboat waterslide. Remember the good old days when you could gladly endanger your life and feel cool about it? Well, here's a gentle reminder of how fun and dangerous it is to ride in a waterslide like a go-kart course. It's a perfect alternative to riding a bicycle, which is commonplace today. Action Park Super Go-karts was one of the most exciting rides because it was the easiest to hack. They were built to run at speeds of 20 miles per hour, which is rational and exciting and safe. Sadly, the park did change the course of the ride after they noticed that jamming a tennis ball in the engine made it run at speeds of 50 miles an hour. This forced them to engage in a game of high-speed catch-up. You can imagine what the effects of this speed would be, though. This crazy ride also had an interesting twist called Super Speedboat. The speedboat could clip along at 40 miles per hour, and to make things even more complicated, these machines were not set up in a clean and chlorinated pool, but a swamp. Lifeguards were stationed on an island in the middle of the swamp where there were several water snakes. There was an incident where one game of bumper speedboat flipped and trapped drivers underwater. Number 2. Grave pool. The grave pool wasn't officially named until years later. Even though this pool was one of the best things to happen to Action Park, it had inherent problems. The pool was 8 feet at its steepest point, 250 feet long and 100 feet wide. 4 massive fans generated waves more than 3 feet high. The fans were turned on for over 20 minutes with only 10-minute breaks, and about 1,000 tourists were allowed to go into the water at a time. Most of the people who swam there didn't know the workings of the pool, nor could they swim. It gets tricky as hundreds of people swim in the pool. It's easier to stay afloat in salt water because of the salt content, but unfortunately the Action Park's pool was freshwater. It pulled and drowned people so frequently that drowning became the order of the day. There were 12 lifeguards on duty and each of them saved at least 30 lives each day. Regardless of their efforts, people still died in the pool. Number 1. Steamer waterslide. It's one thing to build a dangerous slide and another to admit that they're dangerous. Some park authorities lie about the safety of these slides to lure people to them, and this deceit lured more people to the water slide than expected. The Ottawa Sun compares it to a toilet bowl, and this ride is the most notorious at the Calypso Water Park, even though it hasn't been linked to any serious injuries though. Steam riders would sit in tubes and circles in a giant funnel before getting to the exit slide. Sounds like a simple and fun idea, but your inner tube did have the chance of flipping over before you got to the exit. While the park claimed that no accidents happened on the slide, there are suspicions that they were covering up said accidents. Unfortunately, their shady secrets were exposed after 20 safety violations charges were laid on them. The park refused to accept responsibility and even blamed the safety inspector for one of the ride's problems. See you all next time!